There's a quiet glow in bedrooms across the world. The light of screens reflecting on faces long after midnight. Parents zoom in on their teenager's location dot, watching it move down a street. We call it love. We call it safety. But it's starting to look a lot like surveillance. We say it's protection, but the mind reads it differently. Every ping, every delay, every unexpected turn feeds the loop of anxiety. The chemicals meant for emergencies are now part of ordinary family life. In this week's episode, we will explore what's really happening in the mind and brain when families start tracking each other, why hypervigilance feels like care, and how to rebuild connection in a world that confuses attention with affection. We are a generation learning to love through control. We track not because we don't trust, but because we don't know how to feel safe without proof. We want peace of mind, so we build digital cages. We tell ourselves it's harmless, that everyone does it, that it's just being responsible. The non-conscious mind can tell the difference between concern and control, but the conscious mind isn't very good at distinguishing this, which is why it always needs to tune in to the non-conscious wise mind for discernment. In fact, the non-conscious mind sends the same alarm through the body and subconscious mind and then to the conscious mind half a second later. If we don't consciously train ourselves to tune into these signals, to access this wise logic, our rationalizations become something else. Anxiety wearing the mask of care. When the conscious mind reads uncertainty as threat, the brain's anxiety and control circuits will light up unless the conscious mind uses its veto power to pause, stand back, and reach out to the wisdom within each of us. Tracking apps make us believe that safety lives in visibility because they keep the conscious mind stuck in a loop with the nervous system and the wrong messages are sent. But safety isn't the same as surveillance, and love can't coexist with hypervigilance. The moment that trust becomes conditional on location data, the relationship shifts from mutuality to monitoring. We start reading each other's lives like spreadsheets. Who left, who arrived, who paused too long. And it's not just parents or partners. I hear it from teenagers who say, I feel like I can't breathe without permission. From college students who keep trackers on to prove innocence. From spouses who share pins not for connection, but to avoid conflict. These aren't rare outliers anymore. They are reflections of reshaping intimacy itself. When you can see everything, you stop asking questions. Curiosity dies. And without curiosity, relationships can't grow. The paradox is painful. The more we track, the less we trust. The brain treats constant surveillance like a series of small alarms, each one too minor to notice, but together enough to exhaust your system. You can't rest when you are always scanning for proof that you are safe or someone close to you is safe. Our psychoneurobiology was designed for connection, not observation. Maybe we started tracking to feel closer. Maybe it came from love. But what happens when the tool meant for protection becomes the weapon that erodes peace? What happens when checking for safety turns into checking for loyalty? When did love turn into surveillance? Most people don't set out to become watchdogs. It starts small. A quick check to see if your teenager made it to school, a glance to make sure your partner's safe on the drive home. But soon, what began as reassurance turns into routine, and routine becomes reflex. The conscious mind starts scanning before you even realize you have opened the app. At first, it feels helpful. You tell yourself, I'm just making sure everything's okay. But that's when the loop begins. Each check teaches your brain that vigilance equals care. The conscious mind sends the signal, I might lose connection. The brain translates it into stress chemistry and structural change. And the body follows with urgency. You feel a burst of relief when the dot appears. The same reward your brain gives when anxiety gets quick proof that danger has passed. Over time, that pattern hardens into a habit. What you call care, your brain encodes as control. This is the hidden cost of just checking. You think you are building safety, but you are actually training your nervous system to stay on guard constantly. The moment the dot doesn't move fast enough or the battery icon turns to red, what used to be a tool for peace becomes a source of toxic stress. You have probably done this yourself without even realizing it. Sitting in a meeting but watching the clock, waiting for a text that confirms everyone's where they should be. Or checking the app before bed, convincing yourself it'll help you sleep, even though it usually doesn't. That's how fast the pattern takes over. You start measuring calm in notifications instead of in connections. I've seen it happen at dinner tables. I'm sure you have too. Everyone is half listening, half checking. The phone lights up and the conversation pauses for just a second too long. Someone says, I just want to know that they are safe. Parents tell me they can't sleep until they see that last check-in. Teenagers say that they feel like they are living under observation, where turning off location feels like disobedience. Partners say sharing pins has replaced conversation. These are families drowning in data, but starving for trust. The conscious mind reads that missing update, the unsent text, the dot that won't load, as a threat to connection. And the brain follows that signal, releasing stress chemistry meant for emergencies. Heart rate rises, thoughts loop, and before long, you're scrolling through the worst case scenarios in your mind. The more you try to settle your conscious mind with information, the more the conscious mind learns that peace depends on proof. That's the irony of our era. The more we check, the less we trust. Each refresh silently teaches the brain, I don't believe they're okay unless I can see it. Over time, that conditioning rewires relationships. Love starts feeling like surveillance. Connection turns into confirmation. The brain is structured to wire in networks fast. It starts predicting danger before it happens. So even silence or delays feel unsafe. What started as comfort becomes captivity, and when peace depends on constant data, the conscious mind no longer rests. It calculates reactively. That's not a good idea. Families call it responsibility, but the nervous system reads it as alarms. If this sounds familiar, you are not alone. This is how modern anxiety hides in the language of care. Naming it is how you start to change it. Awareness and self-regulation interrupts the loop. You can retrain your conscious mind to separate love from control and rebuild trust without a screen mediating it. If your peace now depends on proof, that is not connection, it's captivity. You can untrain it, as I said. And next, we'll look at what's happening inside the brain when this loop takes over, and why tracking apps are built to keep you coming back for more. Your mind is the creator of thoughts and driver. It interprets, feels, and chooses. Your brain is the engine. It carries out those choices through electrical and chemical activity. When your conscious part of your mind starts thinking, I need proof to feel safe, your brain immediately executes that instruction. It releases stress chemistry to push you towards action, opening the app, checking it again, scrolling for confirmation. The short relief that follows teaches your brain that vigilance equals safety. And this creates what I call a hypervigilance loop between the conscious mind, brain, and body. Each check reduces anxiety for a moment, and that moment becomes the lesson. The brain learns, relief comes from control. Soon, it starts predicting the need to check before anything even happens. Silence feels dangerous. Delays feel like a threat. That's why harmless moments, slow Wi-Fi, a muted phone, a low battery, can trigger the same alarm your body would use in a real emergency. Under the surface, several regions in the brain are being activated by this energy coming from the conscious mind, coordinating this loop. The anterior cingulate cortex in the brain, the brain area that becomes active when we track our errors and social pain, lights up while you monitor. It doesn't know you're opening a family app. It activates the protein network that is facilitating or experiencing the possibility of loss. The amygdala is also activated, signaling urgency. Stress chemicals sharpen focus short term, but repeated spikes drain energy. You end up alert, yet tired, watchful, yet less present for the people in front of you. Here is the sequence to remember. Mind interprets, I might lose connection. Brain executes. Stress chemistry prepares you to act. Body expresses. Shallow breaths, tight focus, restless energy. You repeat that sequence enough, and your baseline shifts towards alertness. This is predictive processing in daily life. The brain is a pattern matching machine, a messenger of the patterns set up by the conscious mind. And when the conscious mind sees gaps in data, it does one of two things. Fills them with guesses to protect you, which is a problem. Or it steps back and consults with inner wisdom and logic from the non-conscious mind to question. That's good. Ambiguity becomes a problem to solve. Tracking apps amplify this by serving constant partial information. A dot without context, a map without a story. Your conscious mind alone keeps guessing and guessing and keeps the stress circuit open. However, when your conscious mind consults the non-conscious, the guessing stops and you get intermittent relief that makes the loop even stickier. Sometimes you check and feel better. Other times you check and feel worse. That unpredictability trains the brain through strengthening the network to chase the next update, like pulling a slot machine lever. The more variable the relief, the stronger the urge to check. You are in a meeting and you notice your teen hasn't texted after practice. You glance at the map. The dots stalls on a road you don't recognize. Your conscious mind assigns meaning. Something's off. Your brain reacts. Chemistry rises to prepare you. Your attention narrows. You miss the question aimed at you in the room. 10 minutes later, the dot moves and a text arrives. Sorry, bus detour. Relief floods in. The network strengthening your brain. Checking kept us safe. The truth, the loop, however, strengthens either way. And over time, this loop reshapes your day. Chronic activation increases fatigue, irritability, and reactivity. Focus fragments. Creative thoughts dull. Sleep quality drops because the conscious mind-brain loop remains on standby. Small frictions at home escalate faster because everyone is running on thinner patience. It is common to mistake this for being responsible. But responsibility without context becomes over-control. And over-control feels like pressure for you and for the people you love. Kids stop volunteering information because every detail becomes an interrogation point. Partners speak less because they feel audited instead of heard. You feel like you are managing safety. In practice, it keeps anxiety in charge. The issue is meaning. When the conscious mind equates proof with love, the brain becomes wired to treat monitoring as care and builds a habit around it. Change the meaning, and the habit can change too. Try a quick self-check to hear how your mind is interpreting the moment. When you feel the urge to open the app, ask yourself, what am I afraid of right now? Harm, dishonesty, or uncertainty? When you name the category, it clarifies which conversation is actually needed. Teach your brain that ambiguity is not the same as danger. And before you check again, choose one action that builds connection over control. Send a short, respectful message. Confirm a pickup plan. Or wait 5 minutes and breathe slowly to signal safety. These little micro moves matter because they change the instruction set from the mind to the brain. Small choices teach your brain we can stay connected without staying on alert. That's a recalibration, not repression. If you lead a household, you can choose to use the logic and wisdom in you to also change the rules of engagement so that the conscious mind-brain loops stop living on partial information. You can decide what truly requires on-demand location sharing, like emergencies and travel, and what can shift to agreed check-ins, like departures, arrivals, schedule changes, etc. Replace open-ended surveillance, purpose-based updates. The mind reads purpose as safety. If you grew up around unpredictability, you do have a strong conscious mind-brain loop that is quick to equate silence with danger. That history isn't your destiny though, but it does explain why this loop grabs you fast. The fix is the same. Retrain the meaning, and the chemistry and networks adapt. Here is the headline I want you to keep. The brain is loyal. It is doing exactly what your conscious mind instructed. Protect at all costs. However, protection without context becomes overprotection, and overprotection compresses relationships. You avoid this loop by accessing your creative and logical wisdom in your non-conscious mind. This is how you get protection with context. So the goal isn't to eliminate the alert systems. It is to recalibrate it. You don't need to delete every tracking app or reject technology altogether at all. You just need to teach your mind a new meaning. I can stay connected without staying on alert. When your conscious mind works with your non-conscious mind, you choose that meaning, and then your brain begins to follow it, and your day regains room for focus and presence. However, when fear drives design, the conscious and non-conscious mind disconnect, and control begins to replace connection. That's where the myths about safety take hold. And in the next chapter, we'll challenge those myths one by one and show you how to move from monitoring to trust without ignoring real risks. When I first started my podcast, I remember sitting there thinking, what if no one listens? What if this totally flops? There's so much uncertainty when you start something new. And honestly, that doubt can be the hardest part. But taking that leap ended up being one of the best decisions that I have made. And having the right tools would have made it a whole lot less stressful. And that's where Shopify comes in. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States, from huge brands to people just getting started. And what I love is how it simplifies everything. You can build a beautiful online store with ready-to-use templates that actually match your brand. And they've got built-in AI tools that help you write product descriptions, create page headlines, even enhance your product photos. So you're not stuck doing everything manually. Plus, Shopify helps you get your business out there with easy email and social media campaigns. And it handles everything in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics. No juggling a bunch of different platforms. And if you ever get stuck, they have 24/7 customer support, which is really huge when you're figuring things out as you go. So it's time to turn those what ifs into your dream with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/leaf. Go to shopify.com/leaf. That's shopify.com/leaf. It's rare that a sponsor story really sticks with me, but this one genuinely did, especially with how much noise there is right now around metabolism and what actually works. So this podcast is sponsored by Veracity. It was founded by Ellie Egan, a certified hormonal health coach, and she spent years dealing with undiagnosed Hashimoto's, and that impacts the thyroid and metabolism. And after turning to functional medicine to address the root causes, she was able to take back control of her health. And that's what inspired Veracity. The whole idea is delivering real, accurate solutions you can actually trust. Their most popular product is Metabolism Ignite, and I started using it recently. Just 2 capsules with breakfast. What stood out to me was how steady my energy felt throughout the day. It's simple, easy to stay consistent with, and it fits right into my routine. It's made with ingredients like lemon verbena, hibiscus extract, green coffee bean extract, and magnesium. It's caffeine-free, and clinical trials showed no negative side effects from the ingredients. Plus, if you are using a GLP-1 medication, it's designed to be safe alongside them. What I like most, that it feels like a balanced, realistic option. No extremes. Basically just something that supports your body in a very straightforward way. So learn from Ali and make the switch to Veracity. Head to veracityhealth.co and use the code Dr. Leaf for up to 65% off your order. Once again, that's VERACITY health.co for up to 65% off. And make sure you use my promo code Dr. Leaf, DRLEAF, so they know I sent you. Every pattern has a story behind it, a set of beliefs that make it feel reasonable. Tracking apps are no different. They thrive on myths that sound like care but are built on fear. Let's talk through a few you might recognize, because every family I've worked with has believed at least one of these. Myth number 1. Tracking means love. You might have said it yourself. I track because I care. It sounds protective, but love isn't measured in visibility. It is measured in trust. When the mind links love with proof, the brain learns that connection only exists under supervision. Suddenly, intimacy becomes performance. Families start living on alert because love now comes with conditions. If someone forgets to check in, it doesn't feel like an oversight, it feels like a rejection. And when love feels conditional, the brain never gets to rest. It stays ready for the next test. Transparency equals trust. We often assume that if everyone shares everything, we'll all feel close, but transparency without boundaries isn't trust, it's exposure. The mind reads continuous monitoring as a possible threat. The brain releases the same chemistry it would during conflict, even when no argument happens. That's why families who share their location all day describe the constant access feels like safety at first, but over time it drains curiosity, and you stop asking questions because you think you already know the answer. Myth number 3. Privacy equals danger. This one shows up most in parenting. It sounds, if I don't know where they are, something could go wrong. But privacy isn't the problem. Disconnection is. Teens, partners, and parents all need short gaps of autonomy to grow self-trust. When every moment is monitored, those circuits actually weaken. People stop practicing independence because someone else always holds the map. I have heard parents say, I just want to make sure nothing happens. And kids reply, but nothing ever gets to happen unless you see it first. That's how protection slowly becomes control. Myth number 4. More data means more safety. The tech world depends on this one. It promises that the more you know, the calmer you will feel. But the conscious mind doesn't read data as comfort. It reads it as more to analyze, which is the primary role of the conscious mind, analyzing data to make choices. Each new notification adds another mental tab to keep open. You don't rest because you are managing information that never resolves. I have heard partners say, I check the app because I want peace of mind. But data without meaning, which is what happens when the conscious mind works independently from the non-conscious mind, never gives peace. You are feeding the loop that keeps your brain alert. All 4 myths grow from the same root. Fear, wearing the mask of care. They start with good intentions, wanting to protect, wanting to stay close. But they end up reinforcing anxiety. The more these myths drive behavior, the more the brain is wired into the pattern of control is connection. That's how families lose peace while chasing proof. Awareness interrupts. Awareness plus self-regulation rewires and lets you change the story before it changes you. So start asking better questions. Instead of, how can I know everything? Ask, what do I actually need to know to feel safe? Instead of, how do I monitor? Ask, how do I communicate? Instead of, how do I keep track? Ask, how do we build trust? Every new question sends a different instruction to your brain. It shifts chemistry and wiring from threat to learning, from control to curiosity. That's the beginning of rebuilding safety that feels mutual and not managed. Next, we'll talk about how to apply the shift from control to connection, and how families can start using emotion as data to design boundaries that heal trust instead of straining it. We have named the myths. Now let's turn that awareness into a new way of thinking, one that moves you from control to connection. Because every urge to monitor, to double check, or to track is your mind saying, I want safety. The challenge is learning how to build that safety through trust instead of control. Truth. Control offers short-term relief, but connection builds long-term stability. Control feels faster, but it drains the brain. Connection takes effort, but it restores energy. When your conscious mind starts reaching for the phone to check again, that moment isn't weakness, it's data. It is your signal that fear is asking for reassurance. Instead of answering fear with a screen, you can answer it with a new instruction. When you notice the urge to check, pause and name it. My conscious mind is trying to feel safe. That simple sentence changes the entire process. It moves the signal from emotional centers of the brain into the areas responsive to the reasoning and perspective that comes when the conscious mind works with the non-conscious mind. Naming creates space, and space creates access to logic and wise reasoning, which in turn create access to healthy choices. You can decide to build safety in a way that strengthens trust, not suspicion. Families who succeed at this don't delete technology, they redefine its meaning. They replace surveillance with shared communication. For example, instead of passive tracking, they create brief check-in rituals. Text when you arrive or ping me when you're leaving. The point isn't to collect data, it's to express care in both directions. And because reciprocity is security, the brain responds by activating security networks. Another reconceptualization is to shift from monitoring to mentorship, especially for parents. The goal isn't to manage your child's location, it's to equip them with decision-making tools, which is long-term empowerment thinking. You can ask, how will you handle it if plans change? Instead of, where are you right now? One builds agency, the other builds compliance. The brain releases very different chemistry and wiring depending on which question you choose. In relationships, the same reconceptualization applies. Replace, I want to understand how you feel about check-ins. When both people participate in defining the boundaries, this reflects collaboration rather than control. And that changes the emotional tone of the relationship from defense into cooperation. There is another powerful shift, proving safety to building safety. Connection builds conditions where danger is less likely to arise in the first place. For instance, instead of checking an app every night, agree on a consistent rhythm of communication. One message when everyone's settled, or a short call that ends the day together. Predictable communication trains the conscious mind-brain loop to anticipate safety instead of searching for it. The conscious mind believes what it repeats. If you rehearse the fear, your conscious mind-brain loop will keep performing vigilance. Whatever you think about the most grows. And that is why reconceptualization is not denial. It is training and rewiring your psychoneurobiology, your mind-brain-body connection. You are teaching your brain that safety doesn't require proof, only presence. So try this the next time you feel the need to check in too often. Instead of opening the app, take one conscious breath and remind yourself, my conscious mind-brain loop is signaling a need for safety. I can meet that need through connection, and then act on it. Send a quick, kind message. Plan a shared moment, or ask a question that opens conversation. Every time you do that, you are updating your brain's operating meaning from control equals love to communication equals. And over time, those new instructions add up. The need to monitor fades, replaced by small rituals of trust. The mind reads those rituals as protection, and the brain follows with steadier energy. It obviously doesn't happen overnight, but it is measurable. Using days with more presence and less scanning. This is what healthy digital boundaries look like. Not withdrawal from technology, but mastery over meaning that engages the collaboration between the conscious and the non-conscious mind. Next, we'll translate this philosophy into something you can practice daily. A short, concrete process you can use to break the control loop in real time and rebuild peace, one decision at a time. We have talked about awareness and reconceptualization, but now I want to give you something concrete you can do in the moment. A short daily process that helps you break the conscious mind-brain loop before it actually builds momentum. I have tried a lot of body care over the years, like shelves full, and I always end up circling back to Osea. There's just something about reaching for a product that consistently makes my skin look more radiant and feel smoother, and it turns a basic routine into a moment I actually look forward to. These seaweed-powered, clinically tested formulas are designed to deliver visible results, and honestly, it does show. Plus, they've got a full lineup, so no matter what your routine looks like, there is something that fits. Lately, I've been especially into Osea's Andaria Algae Body Oil. It's one of their best sellers, and it even won a 2025 Allure Best of Beauty award. It's lightweight, it's fast absorbing, it's not greasy at all, and it leaves my skin with this really beautiful, healthy looking glow. The texture was the first thing that really got me. It just melts in, and I usually apply it right after showering. And I notice my skin feels softer and smoother and just more subtle almost immediately. So it's become part of my wind down ritual, and it really helps create that sense of calm and serenity at the end of a busy day. And the results are backed up. A 2-week clinical study showed that 100% of participants had improved moisturization and elasticity, and they agreed that their skin felt softer, smoother, and looked firmer. So, get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners. You can get 10% off your first order site-wide with the code LEAF, L-E-A-F, at oseamalibu.com. You know, midweek hits differently. You're tired, you're hungry, and honestly, you're tired of making the same 5 meals on rotation. I get it. But here's the thing. There's this part of you that's been craving something different. I know I do. Something adventurous in the kitchen. And that's where HelloFresh comes in. You can cook up bold flavors from around the world without ever leaving your kitchen. We are talking Vietnamese, Moroccan, Caribbean cuisine, 80 plus global recipes every single month. I just got this incredible basil pesto pasta with chicken, and it was absolutely delicious. And the best part, all the stress is gone. No recipe hunting, no ingredient sourcing. Everything arrives at your door, pre-proportioned and ready to go. So imagine cooking with lemongrass, curry paste, ingredients that usually mean takeout, but you're doing it at home because nothing hits like home cooking. Let's face it. I use this and you should try it. So go to hellofresh.com/drleaf10fm now to get 10 free meals, amazing, plus a free NutriBullet Ultra Plus, plus 2-in-1 compact kitchen system, a $189.99 value on your third box. Free meals are applied on a discount on the first box, new subscribers only, and it varies by plan. Disclaimer, you must order the third box by May 31st, 2026. It's called the Trust Neurocycle. It's a 5-step practice you can use anywhere, anytime in less than 2 minutes. I use this tool myself, and I teach it to my private clients, families, couples, and leaders who are ready to replace anxiety with agency. And it works because it gives your mind a clear sequence. Step 1 is called gathering awareness. Start by noticing what's happening inside you when you feel the pull to check. Don't judge it, just notice. Then ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Where do I feel it most? Maybe it's restlessness, maybe it's tension, maybe it's a sense of unease that won't let you settle. Awareness is the signal that begins to calm the system. Tells your brain, I'm safe enough to look. Step 2, reflect. Now ask yourself, what is my conscious mind trying to protect? This question moves you out of reaction and into reasoning. You may realize, I'm afraid of losing my connection, or I'm worried something bad's going to happen. Once you name it, the emotion starts to soften because the network it's built into is weakened. Step 3, write. You don't need a journal, just use a note on your phone or even a scrap of paper. Write down exactly what's looping in your head. The thought, the fear, the scenario. Putting it into words moves it from the non-conscious to the conscious mind. And you can see it instead of being inside it. Step 4, recheck. Now let's apply reasoning and logic. Look at what you've written. Ask yourself, is this thought fully true? Is fear driving this, or is it a fact? Then reconceptualize it. That shift updates the meaning. You are not erasing the fear. You are replacing it with logic that lowers the alarm. Step 5 is called the active reach. Choose one small action that reinforces trust instead of control. It might be a deep breath, a message that expresses care without demand, or a plan to talk later about boundaries. Each time you reach for trust, your brain rewires that pattern slightly. And if you do this consistently, and the urge to monitor will then lose strength. That's it. 5 steps, 2 minutes, anywhere you are. Gather awareness, reflect, write, recheck, active reach. And each round teaches your brain that proof isn't peace, and that safety can be built through communication and not control. Let's make this real with an example. A private client told me she used to check her daughter's location every night before bed. When she started this process, she noticed her first thought was, I just want to know she's okay. She reflected and realized the thought underneath that was, I'm afraid something will happen if I stop checking. She wrote that down. My daughter has come home safely every night this week. She sent a quick text, love you, sleep well. Within 2 weeks, her sleep improved because her conscious mind-brain loop finally heard the wisdom from the non-conscious. That is the power of this process doesn't erase fear, it reassigns it. Fear becomes a signal for awareness and self-regulation instead of a cue for control. Once your mind learns that message, your brain recalibrates automatically. The habit of control starts to dissolve. If you practice this for even 90 seconds a day, you will start noticing the changes. The urge to check will quiet faster. Your evenings will start to feel longer and lighter because your brain isn't running. This is mind management in action. It is the bridge between knowing and doing, between awareness and peace. Next, we'll step outside the science and look at real families who have used this process to rebuild trust and redesign their routine without losing connection. Once they stopped using tracking as proof and started using it as a prompt for conversation. A mother told me she realized she wasn't checking her son's location for safety anymore She was checking it to manage her own anxiety. So she brought this up with him, and they created a new rule. One text after school, one before, trust in between. It sounds small, but she said our evenings feel so much lighter now. The data didn't change, the meaning did. They told me it did more for their relationship than therapy had, because the goal stopped being proof and started being presence. One teenager told me she convinced her parents to switch from scheduled updates. It felt like they finally trusted me, she said. And when they did, I started acting more trustworthy. That's how powerful small shifts can be. The brain changes its chemistry around consistency and choice. These aren't isolated stories either. They are a mirror of what happens when families stop performing safety and start designing it. What does trust look like for us now? Instead of arguing about who checked last, workplaces are learning the same lesson. I recently spoke to a manager I worked with who realized the culture of constant Slack pings and camera checks was just digital surveillance in another form. His team replaced random check-ins with clear expectations and dedicated focus blocks. Productivity rose, but more importantly, so did morale. He said, when I stopped tracking, I started trusting, and people stepped up. What is common across every story is the same neurological pattern. People feel trusted. Their minds read safety, and their brains respond with cooperation instead of defense. That shift doesn't just improve performance, it heals relationships. Trust lowers cortisol faster than reassurance does. And you can't fake it. The mind knows the difference between being watched and being believed. Change rarely begins in consensus. It begins with one person deciding to model trust instead of demand it. One person changing their tone from, "Where are you?" to, "When will you be home?" One person choosing to ask instead of assume, because that's how culture changes, from the inside out. One nervous system at a time. When your household, your partnership, or your team experiences safety through trust, not control, everyone's biology adjusts. Energy that used to fuel hypervigilance gets redirected to creativity and care, the good stuff. That's the cultural mirror I want you to see. The emotions we used to hide, fear, anxiety, protectiveness, aren't weaknesses. They are data. When you translate them into design, safety stops being a rule and becomes a rhythm. If there is one thing this conversation should leave you with, it is this. Trust is not something you build once and keep forever. It is something you maintain daily through the meanings you choose. The mind creates the environment the brain lives in. And when your mind assigns the meaning of safety to trust instead of control, your brain starts producing chemistry and networks that support connection instead of defense. Trust grows when we stay curious, precisely when we don't know. It's choosing to believe in consistency over surveillance, communication over certainty, and honesty over inspection. Peace arrives with presence, not proof. Instead of watching a dot, you make a 1-minute call that ends with, "We're good, sleep well." See, there's no performance, there's just presence. That tiny little ritual teaches the brain where safety lives. If you have noticed yourself stuck in the loop of checking, refreshing, or worrying, remember, that pattern began as care, then drifted into control. You were trying to love safely. The way forward isn't to judge yourself, it's to give that care new instructions. So tonight, when you feel that impulse to check, pause and tell yourself, my conscious mind is asking for safety. I can answer it with trust. Then do one small thing that reinforces the new meaning. Send a gratitude instead of a reminder. Ask a question instead of making an assumption. Or simply breathe before you reach for your phone. Each small act tells your brain connection is safe again. When we stop managing each other like data points, something remarkable happens. Families start laughing again. Partners start listening longer. Parents stop policing and start guiding. The space between us fills with cooperation instead of tension. That is what trust makes possible. Technology holds up a mirror. It reflects fears we haven't named. Everything we covered today follows one path. Emotion raised the flag, meaning set the instruction, chemistry followed, and small redesigns turned back into trust. When we face those fears with awareness instead of avoidance, We don't just protect our relationships, we actually evolve them. So as I close this episode, think about one area of your life that could use less proof and more presence. Maybe it is your family. Maybe it's your work. Maybe it's the way you treat yourself. Whatever it is, let today be the start of that reconceptualization. Because when your mind learns that trust feels safer than control, your brain follows and connection becomes the natural state again. Before you go, if this episode helped you see your habits or your relationships in a new light, just take a moment to share it with someone who needs to hear this. These conversations only matter if they move beyond us, if they start new ones at dinner tables, in group chats, and in family routines. And if you want to go deeper into this kind of practical mind work, join me inside the Help in a Hurry course at helpinahurrycourse.com. Thank you so much for listening, for thinking differently, and for choosing to manage your mind, not just your mood. I will see you next week.